The day my mother-in-law threw my handmade clutch into the trash, she said, "Women like you belong in the kitchen, not in boardrooms." I didn't argue that day. I just smiled. Because I knew one thing she didn't. Someday, she'd carry a bag with my name on it and call it luxury. My name is Addison Claire, and I learned early that silence can be the loudest form of revenge. When I married into the Whitmore family, I thought I had found love and belonging. But what I actually found was a gilded cage wrapped in polite cruelty. The Whitmores were a dynasty, owners of Eterna, one of the world's top luxury fashion houses. My husband, Nathan, was their golden boy, elegant, educated, and entitled. And me? I was the outsider, a designer from a modest background who believed that talent mattered more than bloodline. The first dinner after our wedding said it all. His mother, Evelyn Whitmore, a woman known for her diamond brooches and sharper words, looked at my outfit and smiled sweetly. "Oh dear, how charming. You made this yourself, didn't you?" I nodded proudly. "Yes, I did." She laughed softly. How quaint. Every word she spoke after that was dipped in condescension. Every family gathering was another stage for her to remind me I didn't belong. "Addison, darling, maybe let the professionals handle the designs," she'd say. "I'm sure your little sketches are adorable, though." But I kept sketching. Late at night, on the kitchen table while Nathan scrolled through business reports, he'd sigh, "Addie, Mom just wants the best for us. You don't need to prove anything." But I did. I needed to prove that passion could outshine pedigree. Months passed and Evelyn's influence grew heavier. She chose my dresses, corrected my posture, even criticized my friends. And when I suggested a new design line for Eterna, fresh, modern, inspired by women who worked for their dreams, she laughed. "Eterna represents grace and heritage, not the ambition. Leave business to the family, dear." That night, as I stared at the rejected sketches on my desk, I made a silent vow. If she wouldn't let me contribute to their empire, I'd build my own. I left the mansion the next morning.
No dramatic fights.
Just a quiet departure with a single suitcase and my sketchbook. Nathan didn't stop me. He just stood there, torn between comfort and courage. I rented a small studio in downtown LA. It was barely big enough to fit a sewing machine, a table, and my stubborn will. I called my new brand Aurea, meaning golden. Not because of wealth, but because I wanted every woman who wore it to feel precious, regardless of where she came from. I started small, handmade clutches and minimalist accessories. I used sustainable materials, elegant lines, and real stories behind each collection. One design, the Phoenix clutch, became my signature, symbolizing rebirth and resilience. At first, no one noticed. Then, one evening, a rising influencer posted a picture holding my clutch with the caption, "Proof that power doesn't need a logo." Within hours, my website crashed from orders. Aurea began to rise. Magazines called it the quiet revolution in luxury. Women who had been overlooked by elite brands found themselves in my creations. And slowly, the fashion world began to take notice, including Eterna. A year later, at a major industry gala, I attended wearing my own design, a sleek black gown with golden embroidery shaped like wings. As I entered the ballroom, conversations paused. At the center of the room stood Evelyn Whitmore, surrounded by photographers. Her eyes landed on me, and for the first time, she faltered. She approached, smiling tightly. "Addison, I didn't realize you'd be here." I smiled. Aurea was invited. "We're one of the sponsors tonight." Her expression flickered. "Aurea?" That small accessories label. I leaned closer. The same label that just overtook Eterna in online sales. For the rest of the night, the cameras followed me, not her. I didn't have to gloat. The numbers spoke louder than any insult she'd thrown. Weeks later, an acquisition meeting was announced. Eterna was struggling with modern relevance and investor pressure. They needed a creative partner, someone who understood innovation. And guess who they reached out to? When I walked into the Eterna headquarters, the same place where Evelyn once dismissed me, every executive stood to greet me. I was no longer the outsider. I was the solution. Their CEO smiled nervously. "Miss Claire, your proposal for collaboration could save the brand." I looked at Evelyn sitting across the table, her face pale but composed. Actually, I said, I'm not proposing collaboration. I'm offering acquisition. The room fell silent. My company, Aurea, was now valued higher than Eterna itself. Within a week, the papers were signed. Eterna became a subsidiary under Aurea Holdings. The day I took over as CEO, Evelyn entered my office, clutching her pearls. You really did it, she whispered. I looked up from my desk. You once told me I belonged in the kitchen. Her voice trembled. And now? I smiled. Now you work for me. For the first time, she didn't have a comeback. She just nodded, quietly. Months passed, and I restructured Eterna from the ground up: ethical fashion, transparent sourcing, modern elegance. Sales soared. Eterna was reborn under a vision Evelyn could never have imagined. But the true moment of victory came unexpectedly. At a charity gala, she was photographed carrying the Phoenix clutch, my original design. The same one she once threw into the trash. And the caption under that photo? Eterna CEO Evelyn Whitmore, showcasing Aurea's iconic clutch. The image went viral overnight. Every article mentioned it. The woman who rejected the designer now flaunts her creation. I didn't need to say a word. The world said it for me. Now I sit in the same mansion I once left behind, not as a daughter-in-law seeking approval, but as a CEO who built her own throne. Evelyn still visits sometimes. We share tea in polite silence. She looks at me differently now, not with superiority, but with understanding. Because deep down, she knows the woman she tried to break became the one she could never control. And every time I see that clutch on her arm, I smile. Revenge doesn't always roar. Sometimes it glitters.